Hi everyone, Internet PCS book reader here. Today I want to talk about If I Must Die by Refaat Alareer. Since quite a long time ago, when colonialists are trying to colonialize a country, their colonialist of course is usually trying to eradicate the indigenous people, the natives that were living on their own land. That's the case back then and that's still the same case today. But in modern history, the main target that Israel or any occupation forces targeted is not the military freedom fighter because as history has shown times and again, you can just paint them as a them, using skill like Orientalism or manufacturing content to paint them as the bad guys easily. Like in Palestine case, Hamas for example, it's easier to just push them into the same group as the United States funded Mujahideen group because people who fought violence with violence immediately become less of a perfect victim, so they can just label them as terrorists and move on. That's why Israel's main target usually is the artists and journalists, people who can tell their experience and made it resonate with those who hear or see them. They are peaceful protesters and they will be most people initial shift to recognizing the atrocity being done by the good guy, the most moral army as atrocity because these people are the peaceful protesters that are most stomachable to the liberal viewpoints. Refaat Alareer, a poet and literature professor from Gaza, Palestine, is one of these artists. Refaat Alareer was born in 23 September 1979, just 6 years before I was born. He was born in Palestine that has already spent a few decades under the occupation of Israel, 6 decades and 2 years after the Balfour Declaration, and 3 decades and 1 year after the Nakba. As a kid, he used to spend his time making and flying kites, but he grew up watching so much injustice done by the Israel occupation force that as a teenager, he joined the first Intifada throwing stones toward the IOF that harassed the Palestinian civilians on the daily and got shot and injured because of it. As a child, his family competes on getting his attention. His grandfather even resorted on bribing him with tea to spend time with him, but he preferred to spend time with his grandmother Kamla and also his mother Rikfa the most because they read him stories all the time, and when he grew up, he attributed his skill at storytelling to the both of them. Some of their stories he will eventually be able to relate later on in his life, like his mother's story about her near-death experience in 1960 as a student when Israeli forces attacked Surjaya during a military raid. Eventually, sharing stories, remembering them, becomes some kind of a coping mechanism for him under the constant attack from Israel. Once, when he was a teacher in Islamic University of Gaza, he gave his students writing assignment for what their life was under the occupation. He loved their work so much, despite it being their first time writing, that those stories will eventually be edited, compiled, and published as the memoir anthology Gaza Writes Back that was published in 2014. At that time, the book became successful enough to be translated to numerous languages, and seeing the success of this story, he decided to dedicate his life further into training the youth on how to write, storytelling, creative writing, and even social media. He organized dozens of courses and gave lectures for free teaching young writers and bloggers, giving them the ability to combat Israel narrative and lies, their hasbara. The one who is giving us this introduction to the book, Yosef M. Al-Jamal himself, is a student of Refaat. He wrote that Refaat believed that before Palestinians can live in a free Palestine, they have to create a free Palestine in their imagination through stories, films, novels, and the arts. After equipping his students with the know-how and the importance of storytelling, he eventually started his own blog called In Gaza, My Gaza, where he shared his poems, wrote articles, and shared memes. He posted If I Must Die, his most famous poem and the title of this book on this blog in 2011. In 2007, he also set up Eye on Palestine, one of the first Palestinian websites where students could post in English. His poem, If I Must Die, have become the source of strength for Refaat students, followers, and many pro-Palestine activists to this day, even after his murder in 2023. And Eye on Palestine is still a very active organization nowadays, operating mostly on social media. Refaat has become such a respected and beloved figure with his display of strength, generosity, and masterful storytelling. He got his master's degree in University College of London in Britain and got his PhD in University Putra Malaysia in Malaysia, and if he chose to, he could have lived everywhere on earth, but he chose to go back to Gaza. Knowing how much the Israeli forces try to undermine and limit the education of children there, he pushed them to pursue personal development and higher education, often buying them course books so they can have higher education despite everything. His dream after Palestine is free is to create a big zoo in Gaza. Because of the bombing and starvation, most of the animals in Palestine have been eradicated, so it has been his dream as an educator to show Palestinian children the variety of animals that the world have. He even volunteered in Gaza Zoo among his many activities that he have taken upon himself. And during all of this, he kept combating Israel Hasbara. He wrote about Palestinian peaceful protests in West Bank that was met with police brutality, resulting in the death of Mustafa Tamimi. He wrote how the IOF was laughing gleefully while they were shooting at the Palestinian. He wrote about his cousin, Awad Alareer, a child that the Israel killed because they refused to treat his cancer until he was inoperable. He told the story of Lewa Bakrun, a 13-year-old child who was shot at point blank by Israeli settler, not the IOF, the settler, in front of his classmates as an example of what they could do to them without any repercussion. And the more Refaat's story was heard around the world, the more he was targeted by Israel in ways that are more and more cruel. In 2014, during one of many Israel bombing, they targeted an apartment full of civilians and children, and more than 30 of his and his wife's relatives were murdered with that single bomb, a few dead among the many more Palestinian dead. Death threats from Israeli settler and the IOF kept coming after that bombing, many suggesting that it is his time soon. He and his wife and their children have to keep moving house because they keep being targeted relentlessly since Refaat never stopped telling his story and Palestinian story to the world. And thanks to the hospitality and love of Palestinians to him, he survived for so long. And yet, despite the constant threat to his life, he still combat Israel Hasbara's information. Even in October 2023, he still clashed with liberal Zionist Barry Weiss, the founder of Free Press, that supported the killing of babies as long as the babies was Palestinian and the killing was done by Israel, the most moral army that we have. A month later, almost a decade after losing 30 of his family members and even more neighbors, on about 6 p.m. 6 December 2023, he, his brother, and his son, and his sister and her 3 children all died in a targeted attack toward his apartment room. Yes, the missile hit the apartment and only attacked his room. It's clearly targeted. A few months after that, in February 2024, his eldest daughter, Shauma Refaat Alareer, gave birth to his first grandchild, Ab Al-Rahman. After giving birth, she wrote a note dedicated to her father that said, "I have a beautiful news for you. I wish I could convey it to you while you are in front of me. I present to you your first grandchild. Do you know, my father, that you have become a grandfather? This is your grandson, Abul Al-Rahman, whom I have long imagined you carrying. But I never imagined that I would lose you early even before you see him." And as if what they did is not cruel enough toward Refaat Alareer, a couple months after that, in 26 April 2024, Israel bombed their home, killing Shaima, her husband Mohammed Siam, and the 2-month-old Abd al-Rahman. When we talk about injustice, often we have to talk about the scales of it, so we use data, numbers, and percentage, like how many deaths, average of journalists being killed on a daily. But as cruel as it sounds, it is easier to brush those off since human is just not that good at comprehending any situation based just on numbers. That's one of the reasons why in my video about gender data bias or the gender gap, the few comments I have there is either strawman arguments or just some weirdo with chronically online lingo. That's why art and artists like Refaat Alareer is important, especially in cases like the Free Palestine movement. The Western propaganda machine, whether it's America, Spanish, France, Britain, etc., have all managed to paint the Arab world and the Muslim as they, the bad guy that needs to be subdued. They did this to almost everyone else, including China, but modern China at least have the power to fight back, to combat, or to ignore those misinformation without much impact to them. That's not the case with the Middle East. They have it the worst. Except for a few of their allies like Saudi Arabia, they have dehumanized the Middle East for land and oil for almost all of modern history. Palestine might be the worst victim of this dehumanization propaganda. UK did it to them, US did it to them, their neighbors like Jordan, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia did it to them. Unless you really pay attention to history and knew the context, before the 7th October, it is easier to believe that what Israel did after 7 October is a retaliation instead of an ongoing massacre that has been going on for almost a century. It is easier to forget that Palestine is a third world country under constant attack and oppression by multiple first world countries those entire century. It is easier to believe that Hamas is a terrorist group instead of freedom fighter, instead of a figurative rat that was cornered until it has no chance but to fight back against the oppressor and murderers. It is easier to be a liberal Zionist who is making fun of the word genocide in the middle of an active genocide. It is easier to ignore what it means when people say it will need 15 years just to clear the rubble of Gaza. It is easier to ignore the UN report about the systematic mass rape that Israel is doing to Palestinians, rape that Israel protested not because they are against rape, but because the world were telling them to stop raping the Palestinians. It is easier to justify all of the horrible things that Israel has done to Palestinians if you have dehumanized the Palestinians. Seeing this number might mean nothing to you if you have dehumanized them but you cannot recognize the symptoms of your illness. That's why storytellers like Refaat Alareer and many more that came before and after him is important to make people see that behind those numbers lies humanity. This book is a call to strength and solidarity. Do not give up on the Palestinian rights. I give this a 5. What do you think? Let me know if I missed anything, so leave your thoughts in the comment below and subscribe to the channel. That's about it. See ya.